professor, William Pollock, says this: young people need adults to form a living wall of love that they can lean on, bounce off of regularly. While one wall is great, multiple walls provide even more support. It takes a community of parents, schools, churches, and community leaders to be that wall. You know, I came across that quote many months ago, and it just really spoke to me, because that's how these young people are going to get through life. I've been in youth ministry for 39 years in a different capacity. My wife and I were the direct youth pastors here for 30 years, and turned it over to a couple over here that was part of my youth group when they were younger, and so now they're the youth pastors here. But these young people are dealing with so many different things. 39 years ago, when Johnny and I got involved in the youth ministry here, Generations, back then it was called Grace Christian Fellowship, they had a lot of issues. I mean, just personal issues and things, and anxiety was a little bit known, but not what they're facing today. And it's really tragic what they're facing today. And so I thought, you know, the best way to do this is from a community standpoint. Part of Houston Response. Where's Jeff at? Jeff, I saw him. There's Jeff, who's the leader of Houston Response. And a few years ago, I joined their coalition in the Spring Woodlands, led by my friend Guy here and Bobby Maynard. And so we've been focusing on mental health. And we've been doing that for a few years now. But that's what got me to bring this particular Youth Suicide Prevention Day. And it's so important. We got a great panel. I'm going to introduce the panelists first, and then Dr. Stanford is going to come up and introduce the documentary. At the very end, we're going to have a panel up here. We're going to answer some questions. You'll see up on this table, there's some cards and pens. If you've got a question about mental health, especially with youth and young people, write it down. We'll address those at the very end. And we're just going to we'll have a roaming mic as well at the very end after the documentary, and you can ask your questions then as well. So anyway, I'm going to first of all start out by I'm going to introduce you last for a second. But Mark Kagos is here. He's a licensed chemical dependency counselor at Life Springs. He's one of our panelists as well. And Kim Hess, you can wave up there. They're going to introduce themselves even more later. But Kim has started an organization called Cassidy Join for Hope. Some young people, after-school clubs, and they talk about mental health and suicide for youth. And we've got some of her students are going to be a panelist as well. Where's Gail at? Gail Cheatham. There's Gail. Gail Cheatham, Thrive Offline. Great organization. Helps parents and young people deal with social media. I call social media and artificial intelligence the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it really is the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's needed in our time, but you've got to control it. So Gail will be one of the panelists. And where's Ashley? Ashley, I saw there, right there. Ashley goes to church here. She's works for Conroe ISD as a special ed teacher, but she's written several papers on suicide, and so she's one of the panelists as well. And then Dr. Matt Stafford here. I'm sorry. Keep hearing a pop. That's what's got me sidetracked and distracted. But Dr. Stanford has an organization, Hope and Healing Center and Institute, and Gateway to Hope University. And I started taking classes to become a mental health coach through American Association of Christian Counselors, and saw most of that material was written by Dr. Stanford, and he did a lot of those classes, and so I started taking some of his classes online as well. So Dr. Stanford, I'd like for you to come up now, introduce the documentary, tell us a little bit about faith and how mental health professionals can come together.
Thank you, John. I think I got asked to introduce this because I told John that I had actually seen the documentary already. So I actually had the privilege of seeing this documentary and then seeing the young woman that it's about speak after the documentary. So, suicide is a tremendous problem today, as you here know. Unfortunately, it's not something we ever talk about. There's been a 40% increase in the suicide rate in the United States since 2000. This is not a product of COVID. This is not even a product fully of social media. I mean, already was a significant increase even before all of that existed. Today in the United States, suicide is one of the leading causes of death for children and adolescents. In fact, for those 10 to 14 years old, it's the second leading cause of death behind accidents, which again is not something you ever hear. It's more than twice as many people every year die by suicide than are murdered in the United States. We talk about murder all the time, the murder capital. But suicide is not the problem. Suicide is just a symptom. It's just a metric of a declining, increase in the suicide rate is a metric or a measure of the decline in mental health generally in the population. And we have an unbelievable decline in mental health that began in the late 90s. And today, when entering college freshmen are surveyed, a vast majority, will say that their mental health is negative. Whereas, 2 decades ago, it was just the other way around. A vast majority would say are positive. So we have an unbelievable decline in mental health. We have a system that has never seen even 50% of the people with mental health problems in a given year. So the majority of people with mental health problems never receive any treatment. And so it's a disaster. I mean, you can't, it sounds like you're making it up. It's so bad. And yet we never talk about it. We just never talk about it. And because people with mental health problems are stigmatized and they're shamed and they're looked at as weak and they just need to get over it. I once heard a very prominent pastor say, I just understand depression. I'm too busy to get depressed. And, I thought that was I think he quoted that from Jesus, I think. But that's pretty rough to hear that kind of a thing. So churches have a tremendous role to play in mental health care because people in psychological distress, people that struggle with mental health problems, are more likely to engage a clergy before they engage a mental health care provider or physician. And that's anyone in the general population. It's not just people who believe in God. It's not people that go to churches. It's anyone in the general population. It's the weirdest statistic you'll ever come across because there's nothing else like it. What else would cause someone who doesn't go to church and doesn't believe in God to go to a church first? There's no other problem like that. And so, but very few clergy ever recognize what's in front of them and never make a referral or don't have the connections to the mental health care system. There's just not a connection. So that's one of the things that we hope to do more is to get more connections between mental health care and faith communities, because faith communities are a healing community, a place where people can recover and have support and learn about Christ and and have the love that they so desperately need. So we're here today to see the documentary My Ascension, which is a documentary about a young woman named Emma Benoit, who in 2017, when she was 16 years old, a varsity cheerleader, she attempted suicide and survived, and it left her partially paralyzed, as you'll see in the documentary. So it's very, at times, very raw. It really does help you understand how people that might be contemplating suicide, what they're thinking, how they're feeling. So it's a very personal story of her kind of her decline, but then also her resiliency and her recovery and how she's now purposed to use her life to try to be more preventative. I also think it's very educational for us in the sense that we get a sense of how can you recognize that someone is having these thoughts, and how can you actually step in and be a kind of a bump in the road that keeps that from occurring. Because that's really all that's required. Just engaging someone in a conversation that you think might be having suicidal ideations makes it less likely that they're going to attempt suicide. So it's not magic. And you'll see that in the documentary. So it's a wonderful documentary about, a personal documentary about struggles, resiliency, recovery, but also really raises awareness. And as you watch it, just ask yourself, how can I as an individual, or how as we as the church, Big C Church, how can we be more aware so that we can notice people that might be struggling, so that we can stand alongside them and help them to move in a more positive and healing direction. So I'll turn it over to the documentary.
If I could have our panelists join me up on the stage here, please. There's a great group of panelists here. We also have some great organizations that have tables out there. Tri-County Behavioral Health is one of them, and there's some classes that they offer that's free that you can take. And so I just encourage you at the end of our session to go ahead and please stop by and take advantage of all of those. So here, there's an extra chair here. So, there you go. But I would like for them, each and every one, to start, Dr. Stanford down there, to introduce his organization a little bit more and tell us a little bit about it. I've taken, like I said, I'm taking classes through Gateway to Hope University. They offer some free classes out there as well that I think people should take advantage of. Dr. Stanford first.
I'm Matt Stanford. I'm the CEO of the Hope and Healing Center and Institute, which sits on the campus of St. Martin's Episcopal Church. We're a separate organization. They provide a building for us, and our mission is to increase access to mental health care here in the city and beyond. And so we do have a clinic for people with serious mental illness there at our building. All of our services are free. You go into a year-long outpatient program that includes psychiatric medication, therapy, support groups, case management. But as I said, everything is at no cost to the client. But we have people come from over 200 zip codes a year. And then we also offer a training side where we equip faith communities, schools, and workplaces to be front doors to the mental health care system. So we have a mental health literacy training called Empower that we do in all of those organizations, as well as our mental health coach training where people become trained paraprofessional to work in those settings, particularly faith communities and faith-based nonprofits who offer some type of supportive services to individuals with mental health care. We also have a Hope Line, which is our evening support line. You can call between 5 and 8 p.m. 7 days a week, 365. It's answered in English and Spanish. You get a half-hour counseling on the phone and referrals to mental health providers if you want that. It's a warm line rather than a hot line. It's not for crisis. It's just for support, so you can call as many times as you want. We have a table out in the foyer, and we have cards for the Hope Line if you'd like to pick some of those up. It's a great kind of entry, an easy way to help somebody who might be struggling.
Mark. And let me say something about Mark. Mark is not only with Life Springs, but he was also a youth minister in the past. So Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I first want to say thank you for coming out and sharing this information. As was stated, I'm with Life Spring Behavioral Health. We're here in the Woodlands, and LifeSpring is an outpatient office. We have psychiatric care through licensed psychiatrists. We also have psychiatric nurse practitioners, and we also have licensed counselors. And it's a faith-based facility. So not only are we offering assistance and support from a traditional standpoint, but we're also offering the support from a faith-based perspective as well, which is, at least in my heart and mind, essential. I've been doing mental health and addiction for close to 30 years now, in one form or another. And as was said, I did youth ministry for probably 4 years as well in a previous life. So working with the young guys and the teens and the adolescents is always close to my heart. Being a dad and watching my teenage daughter go through the things that they're going through as well keeps things in perspective, and I can see what's going through. One of the things that hit me hard was the young lady in the video said that we're out there drowning, and we need a life preserver to be thrown out at us. And I was sitting there and I just thought, wow, that's rough. And if we can do that as a community and as professionals and as a collaboration, if we can be that life preserver, that's why we're all here, right? So I just wanted to say thank you.
Ashley?
Sorry, my allergies are really bad today. I'm up here because suicide awareness is a passion of mine. My background is I have a degree in counseling psychology. I was addiction counselor for 3 years. I had my LCDC, licensed chemical dependency counselor. And then I graduated college, and this is significant, in the year 2008. Well, 2008, something happened in our economy that greatly affected my ability to get a job. At the time, I lived in Virginia, and so it was 12% unemployment. So I became a teacher. I got my license to be a teacher. I'm a special education teacher. I work currently at Ford Elementary with early childhood special education. I've worked every single grade, so from 3-year-olds to 19-year-olds. And I have a history of suicidal ideation and a history of suicidal attempts.
Gail?
Hi, I'm Gail Cheatham. I'm the executive director and founder of Thrive Offline. Our mission is to educate and equip the community with healthy digital habits. So we're not anti-tech, but we believe it's a tool, age appropriately, that can be used to enhance your life and not distract from it. Our 3 pillars are prioritizing in-person connection, building those life skills, social, emotional, resilience, all of that, and then healthy digital habits. And we have a youth board because no matter how much I learn about technology, I don't know how it is to grow up in technology. And so we really want to hear from our youth, and you'll get to hear from some today, not part of my group, but but that's how we really make an impact and help them where they are, meet them with their challenges in a way that truly supports them. So I believe strongly in giving them a space to be heard so we can help them.
Can we pass the mic down to Kim here first? Oh, you got one. I didn't know
I think
that.
it works, yeah.
So let me, I attended an event called Breaking the Silence a few months ago at the Woodlands Church and got the chance to meet Kim. And, that documentary talked a lot about Hope Squad. And one of my friends works with the Hope Squad down in Houston. She couldn't be here today. But Cassidy joined for Hope, which Kim's going to introduce, and some amazing young ladies here. I had a chance to hear some of them as panelists, and so I asked Kim if she would have them come up as well. So Kim, introduce yourself.
Hi, so yes, I'm Kim Hess, and I'm with the Cassidy Join for Hope Foundation. Our mission is to prevent teen suicide. This documentary hit home for me today. Because in 2015, just 5 days before Christmas, we lost our beautiful 16-year-old daughter, Cassidy, to suicide. And it's changed our family forever. I see so much of Cassidy in Emma. She was just 16. She was a junior at College Park High School. She was a cheerleader. She was silly. She didn't take herself too seriously. She was just seriously a shining bright light with her whole world ahead of her. But like Emma, she was struggling in silence, and she didn't tell anyone. And the day she took her life came out of complete shock, surprised us all. We did not see it coming. There were no signs. But Cassidy's beautiful light and spirit, and her story did not end that day. Because now I go and I share Cassidy's story with schools and churches and community events, whoever will let me share her story. And I'm finding out there's still a lot of Cassidys and Emmas out there. We still have a lot of youth struggling in silence. So I quickly learned that our problem is a lot bigger than I originally thought. Back in 2015, I know of 6 students in our community alone that we lost to suicide. And there were probably even more, but we weren't talking about it. Cassidy's was the first one that I had heard about. But that was 10 years ago. So now we are starting to slowly break the silence. And one of the first things that we did was I sat Cassidy's best friends on my back porch that next summer. I needed to understand, they needed to understand, we need to figure out as a group, what do we need to be doing to where you don't lose another peer to suicide? And one of the first things they said, we need to talk about it in the schools. They spend so much time at schools, and yet they're not talking about it and they're not sharing their struggles. So we'd never heard of the Hope Squad, but we knew that we had to do something very similar to the Hope Squad. So we started the first Join for Hope Club at College Park High School nearly 10 years ago, and it was called the Cavs Join for Hope. And so we did exactly what the Hope Squad's doing. We started training our kids how to recognize the signs for suicide, how to be there for a friend, how to get help, and then basically how to be a lifeline for a peer. And so what we thought would just stay contained at College Park High School slowly grew. The other schools saw what we were doing, and so now I'm proud to say that we have 10 schools with Join for Hope clubs in them, 2 of them on college campuses, 1 at UT and 1 at LSU. So it's important for our youth to understand that they can be the voice of hope for each other, and that their voice matters, and most importantly, their life matters. So I'm proud to have several of our Join for Hope Club students up here ready to share their voice. You want to please introduce yourself and tell us your name and what school you go to, what grade you're in, and what the name of your club is.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm a senior at College Park, and our club is called Cavs Join for Hope.
Hi, I'm Ruby, and I'm at the Woodlands High School, and our club is Highlanders Join for Hope.
Hi, I'm Ananda. I'm also at the Woodlands High School. So we're Highlanders Join for Hope. So we do a lot of work about spreading, just talking about suicide, because it's so important to spread the word, to talk about it, to destigmatize it, and so that's what we really try to do.
That's awesome. But I tell you, when I was at the Breaking the Silence and had a chance to see some of the young people from Cassidy's Join for Hope, and just the passion that they have for other students and for the mental health awareness, it just really got my attention, and I'm so glad that this panelist is here. Like I said, we have also several other organizations that have tables out there. You know, I was a little bit disappointed in the numbers that showed up today. But you know what? I believe that God's got every one of us here for a purpose. Now, we are live streaming this. There are several people that told me that they wanted to see the live stream. Well, they wanted to couldn't be here because they're out of town, but they wanted to be a part of it. So we are live streaming this, and we are also recording. We'll have a recording of the panel discussion. And the documentary, My Ascension, we have the rights to show that. So if you have an organization that's interested in that, then we would like to bring it to them, and we can do that also. So anyway, let me start out with a few questions to the panelists here, and I would like for you to hear from some of y'all, some of your questions for the panelists. We have cards up here that you can come forward and get and write one. In a few moments, we'll have that mic being passed around if you have a question for any of the panelists up here. But let me start out with some stats from Springtide Research. 47% of high school students are moderately or extremely depressed. 55% of high school students are moderately or extremely anxious. 57% are moderately or extremely stressed. 40% experience persistent feeling of sadness and hopelessness. 53% of those are girls, and 28% are male. 29% experience poor mental health. 20% seriously considered attempting suicide. 27% are females, and 14% are males. Every day, as you learned in the documentary, every day in the USA, 20 young people die of suicide, and 280 others have seriously considered it. So I have some questions for the panel. Just any of you just jump in. And I have some directly. I'm going to be talking to some of the young ladies here. But when you hear the stats of high school students, based on your experiences, are there any surprises? Were there any surprises in it? They're shaking their heads up in there.
My surprise was actually that I thought the numbers were low. I thought it would be higher. But I work with special education, so I think, and the history, the background I have in psychology and counseling, I have a little skewed perspective. That's who I see. I see the people who are struggling, you know, whether it's disability, socially, or addiction. So, yeah, I thought the numbers were low.
You know, all the stats for females are worse. And why is that happening? Why do we think that's happening? We look at the statistics for females that think about suicide and have maybe even tempted. Why would that be worse?
I think just going to the point, too, of the numbers being low, I don't know that our kids are even taught to recognize these emotions. And I know for me, in my history, I had these feelings inside and I didn't know what to name them. I didn't know what it was, you know, anxiety and loneliness. And so I think sometimes when they have these surveys, they don't even know that they are in that to even answer the question. And I think that's also why maybe some of the females are higher, because we are taught to be okay with more emotions, more in tune with them, whereas our boys, they're struggling just as much. They just don't get to be okay with not being okay. You know, they have to show this strength. And so I think the numbers are probably skewed, and there's probably more boys struggling. I have a son myself, and it's just as hard for him as my daughter. But they're not told that it's okay to show weakness and to show emotion.
I have something to add, and maybe I have some of my student females kind of chime in on this, but I mean, I think one big thing about females is they fall into that trap of comparing yourselves to other females, to, you know, to other peers, but also, you know, through social media, through celebrities that you just really can't compare with. So would y'all agree with that?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I wasn't really shocked by the numbers just because being a high school student is so competitive and it feels like everything we do is never enough. It's like, oh, the grades, the sports, I'm not pretty enough, I don't have enough money, I'm not popular, I'm not liked. It's just so much that goes into it on top of all of our personal struggles already.
That's good. That's good. Anybody else, any comments about the female?
Sorry, I talk a lot, so I'll try not to. So just as a person who did struggle in high school, I could even begin to imagine nowadays, because we just didn't have, we had bullies, but I couldn't imagine being bullied online or have to compare myself online. So I'm thankful not to be a kid nowadays, sorry. And I think girls they have different expectations in life. Like, you have to be pretty, you have to be smart, but not too smart, because then, you know, you're a nerd. Not too pretty, because then you're conceited. And it's about balancing life, that a teenage girl just does not have the skills that is needed to balance this life. And, you know, oftentimes, because they can't communicate how they're feeling or why they're feeling it, they have no one to turn to. You know, they're scared that they're going to be judged. They're scared that they're going to be looked down on, or that, you know, minimize their pain, or you're just being dramatic, or you know, there's something wrong with you, whatever it is. So I think boys have their own struggle, and girls have their own struggles. So
That's good. You know, one of the reasons I wanted to do this youth suicide prevention day was because, you know, I think parents need to be educated on because like we learned in the documentary and what Kim just also shared about her own daughter, we don't know sometimes that they're struggling. You know, they put on a good front, and a lot of times they're dealing with anxiety and depression, and it's not even known sometimes until it's too late. And so I think, you know, how can we educate parents and grandparents about the mental health issues and how and what they can do? Anybody?
I think it's important to just make sure they start those conversations around the kitchen table, around, you know, at home. Just communication is the lifeline for your child. And it doesn't have to start with heavy topics. I mean, just get them to communicate in everyday simple things, and don't ask them just yes or no questions, like, how's your day? It was good, and let them go straight off to their room. I mean, ask questions that really gets them to share what their day is about. Ask them specific questions about their day. And then, most importantly, I think you got to learn how to be a fly on the wall and just always keep your ears open whenever they're in communication with other friends on the phone. Always be that parent that wants to be the carpool parent, where you're sitting and you're driving the car and you can hear the conversations going on in the back seat. You can learn a lot from just being a carpool, the chauffeur. But Cassidy didn't like to talk. She didn't like to share. And so that's where we fell short. It wasn't on our radar. I mean, back 10 years ago, we weren't talking about suicide. We weren't talking about mental health with our kids. It was just assumed everyone's doing fine. Hey, we sucked it up. We did fine when we were in school. Why can't our kids? Well, it's different. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the smartphone. We didn't have the internet. So that it's not an even playing field anymore. So as a parent, we just have to understand that it's different. So we have to parent different. And so we have to ask different questions. But the most important thing is trust your gut as a parent. Be very perceptive of the little things, Are they acting differently? Are they spending too much time in their room? Are they sleeping too much? Are they sleeping too little? Are they losing interest in things that they used to love, Or have their friends changed? Are their grades dropping? Take note and don't just dismiss anything, because in today's world, we can't dismiss any of that. As a caring parent, you just have to go that extra step and make sure that you're doing everything you can to let them have a happy high school. And I think that's one thing. Unfortunately, when I talk to a lot of students, they are not liking high school. They're not happy. And that's heartbreaking as an adult. I mean, high school should be carefree and some of the simplest, most happy time of your life, because you don't have a lot of responsibilities. They can't wait to get out of high school and just go on to the next step, which is really sad. So I don't remember what the question was. But anyway, that's it.
How can you educate parents?
Yeah.
I agree. I can't more strongly agree with that. I think that this can easily become a very intimidating conversation. And I think it's important to remember that you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to have letters behind your name. I think that you would be surprised what you see and what you hear when you listen and look. But actually, when I say that, there's not enough strength behind that. I think that life throws a lot at what I call noise at us, right? Life throws a lot of noise at us, and we can become desensitized to that noise. And not only can we become desensitized to that noise, but it's a natural progress. It's a natural process that we go through. We become desensitized. And that has a tendency to stop us from listening. And it has a tendency to stop us from seeing things. And there's something out there called active listening, right? And that's what you guys were talking about. Active listening is, are you hearing what is being said? Are you seeing what you're looking at? If your child or a teen or your friend is taking the time to actually speak with you, which is a small miracle in itself nowadays, listen. Nothing is trivial. Nothing is trivial, right? And you're right. It has to be more than, how was your day? Good. Great. Okay. I grew up in a house where I have a 16-year-old that I get a text message and she's upstairs. Right? That's not good enough. That's not going to work. And unfortunately, and I see some young guys up here, this is not aimed at you guys. I'm not knocking the generation, but we have a generation that has lost the ability to communicate. Okay? And it is because of social media. It is because of cell phones. Nobody is going to tell me that an emoji is emotion. All right, we've lost that ability. So I think that the first step in educating, and I think the first step in helping is listening, but actually listening, and understanding that things are not trivial. right? It's not trivial. If somebody's going to take the time to say, can I talk? I don't care what laundry you're doing. I don't care that you have to do dishes. I don't care that you're running late for something. I don't care that the dog needs fed dinner. Take that as a privilege, right? Take that as a privilege. I get to sit down and listen. I get to do these things. Take that as a privilege and sit on the couch and say, all right, let's go. Let's listen, talk. Because you may only have that opportunity once. You may only have that chance once. And if I don't practice active listening, I've lost that opportunity. I've lost that chance. And if I think that things are trivial, even when they're little, and my daughter comes to me and wants to talk to me about the fact that she went to the prom and one of her friends had the same exact dress on, and I can't figure out why that's a big deal, when there is something that I classify as a really big deal, they're not going to come and talk to me because I classified that as trivial and I passed that off, right? You've got to take advantage of these opportunities. It's a big responsibility to be a parent. It's a big responsibility to be a peer or a friend, right? And we cannot take those things for granted. We've got to actively listen. We've got to know what we're seeing. You don't have to be a professional to do this. There's a time and a place for professionals, and we also need to recognize that as well. But the most important thing that you can possibly do, and I say that as a professional, but more importantly as a parent, you have to listen. You have to listen and you have to know what you're hearing. And nothing is trivial. Nothing is not a big deal. And I know I said this before, but it's that important. When somebody takes the time to sit and talk to you, and when somebody wants to say something to you, listen. Not just kids either, right? If a friend calls and says, can we talk? Don't look at your calendar. Don't look at, well, let's see when I can do that. Now. All right? So, I'm going to get back off my soapbox and pass it on to somebody else, but I think that that's how I would answer that question.
Can I hear from one of our student panelists?
So I think recently the way we have started to communicate has changed, especially for teens. And we talked in the video a lot about hiding under a mask. And I think we hide a lot of our emotions under silly joking terms like KYS. If you're not familiar, that's kill myself. And these joking terms a lot of times hide a lot that we don't really feel comfortable saying. We want to present this image that we're perfect and we're doing great all the time. We're happy because we see that's how we are successful and we have friends. But a lot of times these terms kind of hide something a lot deeper. Even if it's just ranting culture. A lot of times those rants kind of mean something else. And so I think parents can take a lot of time to look into what does that mean? What is your child trying to tell you? Yeah.
Anybody else?
I want to feed off the trivial because I know, and anyone can tell me or share their opinion. I know sometimes when I say something trivial, it's a test. It's okay, something that, oh, I walked in and stubbed my big toe. If someone's not going to acknowledge it or minimize something that small, why would I trust them with something bigger? So it's a test of trust also. So that's another reason you really cannot minimize anything someone says or, oh, you're just so dramatic. So if I say something small and you're calling me dramatic, why would I tell you something big?
Another reason I wanted to do this Youth Suicide Prevention Day was invited pastors and from my role, student pastors, youth pastors to be here. And so since we're recording this, we're going to be showing this panel discussion to some of the student pastors later. But a question for Dr. Stanford. Dr. Stanford, how can we better educate churches? I know you mentioned it earlier in your early introduction, but how can we better educate churches, pastors, and clergy, student pastors about the mental health crisis?
Yeah, I think, as I said, people are more likely to go to a clergy or to a minister when they're struggling with these problems, but oftentimes they don't know that they're struggling with a problem. or the family doesn't know. They just know there's some problem. Maybe someone may walk in and say, if it's an adult, I'm not getting along with my wife, or I lost another job. If it's a child, maybe his grades have started going down. He's acting out. They don't necessarily recognize it as a mental health problem. I think number one, particularly for youth and college pastors, in the general public and even in the media, we tend to talk about mental health problems if they're problems of adults. I know we're talking here about struggles that happen in the context of adolescents and children, but we tend to not talk about it in the same way. What we have to educate youth pastors and even parents and college age pastors is that half of all chronic persistent mental illness is in place by 14 years old and manifesting by 14 years old. And 75% by 24 years of age. So between 14 and 24 years old, the majority of people that are going to have a mental illness, like a serious mental illness, like serious depression, bipolar disorder, things like that, it's begun to manifest already. But we don't think about it that way. Most people, most parents that I'll deal with, they just kind of think that children are just kind of happy-go-lucky and they're bulletproof and invisible, as my dad used to say, and they just kind of live their lives, and they just kind of brush that off. But those things are already in place, and I think, particularly with children and adolescents, those individuals are being typically brought to churches. They're not just deciding on their own to just go, get on their bike and go. So youth pastors and college, children's ministers, youth pastors, and college pastors are actually more likely to see mental health problems within the faith community. And I think what we have to do is equip them with enough awareness so that they can differentiate what's kind of just a struggle that goes on, what we think about as, the worried well, people that are struggling with kind of everyday problems, versus the initial manifestations of some type of mental health problem that might require, actual professional referral. I think that that's one aspect of that, and then helping them have the connections to make those referrals. And then I think helping them as a faith community have in place supportive systems within the faith community where those families and individuals feel comfortable kind of recovering from that and are going to be there long term. So, faith communities are already set up that way, but much like in the general public, there's so much stigma and shame associated with mental health problems that unfortunately we run into a lot, where families say that when my child started having mental health problems, well, then I was just looked at as a bad parent, and they didn't really want us around. Sadly, I could, from all the years of work doing this, I could sit here for another hour and just tell you horrible stories of families that were driven out of churches or told literally as they walked in, this is a neurodevelopmental problem, but as they walked in with their autistic child at the front, that for the first time, the usher stopped them and said, "We don't have anything here for you. You should go somewhere else." So, so I think that we do need to equip, and then the final thing I would say is this: it's not hard to equip them. We and many other organizations have training that's available where you don't have to become, I think the problem is people think they have to become kind of like a junior psychologist or psychiatrist. All they have to do is become aware and have some skills. So in part of all of our training is a suicide risk assessment. So anyone can be trained to do these things. It's just whether a faith community, for instance, or a school or whatever wants to make it a priority.
Mark, anything you want to add to that? Because I know.
I think that Dr. Stanford hit it on the head. I think that a lot of people fall short because they simply don't know what their resources are. You run into an issue, you run into a problem. Now what? And I think that if everybody was made more aware of the resources that are out there, I think that would help tremendously.
I'm a big promoter of Gateway to Hope University because I've taken some classes through it. And like I mentioned earlier, there's some free classes that you can take there. I've been talking to youth pastors, trying to help them educate themselves about it and the crisis that we're in, especially with young people. Let's move to a different direction, talk a little bit about online behavior and social media, if we can. Let me give you some statistics around social media. Emergency room visits for self-harm have increased for adolescent girls by 188% since 2010, and for boys, 48%. Suicide rates for adolescents have increased for boys 91% and for girls 167% since 2010. Teens 12 to 17 who had a major depression episode in the last year. For girls, it's increased 145% since 2010, and for boys, 161% since 2010. What's significant about 2010, do you think? When you take smartphone out and you pair that with the internet, then you have social media. And as I said earlier, social media can be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. And it's just a real problem. We'll get a couple of questions around that. What effect does social media have on young people? Let's hear from some of our students. What effect do you think it has?
I think social media can have both a positive and negative effect, but I'll talk about the negative effect first. So I think a lot of the times it can be very superficial, and Instagram, for example, it's just the highlights of someone's life. It's all of their best parts that they're sharing. And I feel like you can a lot of the times get wrapped up in that, and you forget that this isn't their whole life. This is just a small part of it. And so I think, people can then compare it to their own life and be like, oh, well, they're having all these, amazing moments. Why aren't I? But I think also on social media, though, it's ways that we can share mental health awareness, and people can share their stories. So I think it can be used in a positive way as well.
Gail?
Yeah, it's something where, comparison has always been around, but now we are comparing ourselves, our insides, to the best and the edited of somebody's outsides. We're also not just comparing ourselves to our neighbors down the street with similar resources and families. We're expecting ourselves to live up to how celebrities are living and things like that. And I had a conversation with some youth yesterday about life purpose. And there's this whole idea of performing, and everything that you need to do needs to be grand and save the world. And, if people don't see what you're doing, it's not important. And there's not enough self-reflection and figuring out who we are as people, what our value alignment is, things like that. It's all of this outward validation and how many followers can I get, how many likes, and this conditional love that, you put something out there, you put a picture of yourself and you don't get any likes on it, and then suddenly I'm thinking that something's wrong with me. The youth just don't have the frontal lobe developed, and they're also more susceptible to these rewards and the dopamine hits, and so it just becomes a vicious cycle. So I really encourage parents to delay social media until age 15, 16, delay phones, until about age 13. Really foster that in-person relationships, that true connection. The magic happens in person. The eye contact, the hugs, the feeling loved and valued. That's all, that we really just, every human being is looking for, just to feel that we're loved and valued. So
I think the other thing, and I'll make this really short, I promise. I agree. I think that I think social media and filters put such an unrealistic expectation on individuals. I also think the other thing is, very realistically, that not everybody on social media is, and this is just realistic, not everybody out there has your best interest at heart. So when you are sharing these things and you are talking about these things, not everybody has your best interest at heart, and you need to be aware of that. There are forces out there, and there are people out there, unfortunately, that when you do share these things, they're going to take advantage of them, and they're going to push and promote the wrong direction. And earlier in our conversation, somebody had mentioned filters. Don't think that you're being intrusive, right? And don't let the guilt of, well, I need my privacy. That's what your bedroom's for. You can have your privacy. There is no such thing as privacy on social media. And as a parent, as a caregiver, make sure you know what's happening. Make sure that you're involved. Have those filters, especially at those ages, right? Know what they're doing. Some of the biggest warning signs that I've come across are through filters and the text messages that are being sent. I'm not reading every single text message. The parents aren't reading every single text message, but there are filters out there for social media that key in on certain words, right? Anxiety, depression, bullying. Those are all keywords, right? And if you have a good, legitimate filter out there, use it as a tool. Take the time, look at them, read them. And then what was also mentioned earlier was use them as, not confrontation, because confrontation will cause shutting down, but use them as conversation, right? Not, hey, I was reading your text messages. That'll shut a conversation down in a heartbeat. But, right, you open them up as conversations and you use it as a tool. So I think that you're right. I think social media has benefits, but we all have to be realistic and we have to be aware of the dangers out there as well.
I would say I totally agree with what everybody has said, and then we have a tendency to focus when we talk about social media, particularly on comparison and things like that. But I think we'd even actually take a step even further back with the idea that we understand that all mental health problems are a combination of biology and environmental stress and the way we deal with that environmental stress. And not everybody that comes to anything comes on a level playing field. So we have a tendency, I think, parents particularly, that everybody kind of thinks of every kid as the same as they deal with social media, but everybody isn't coming with the same resiliency, they're not coming with the same biology. And so what happens is when a person has a particular biological load and they're exposed to levels of stress, then you may have a manifestation of a mental health problem. And with a smartphone, for instance, you have access to all of the terrible things that are going on around the world in an instant, and you don't even get to pick what you look at. I mean, it's chosen for you, and so you're just exposed continually to a lot of very negative things, and you may or may not be able to deal with that. There's no doubt that over the last 2 decades, we've seen dramatic reduction in resiliency in children. We are not training our children to be resilient. They fall apart at the smallest stressor, and so in addition to poor diets, bad exercise, which is affecting us neurobiologically, they're just simply not equipped to deal with that. And even as a parent, we know that we shouldn't expose our children to adult problems. They don't have the emotional maturity, they don't have the skills to be able to deal with that, yet we throw a phone into their lap and we say, here, deal with the Ukrainian war, deal with Pakistan having a nuclear weapon, deal with all of these things on top of the fact that, the girl that sits next to you in math class said that you're a slut. And so we are asking children to deal with things they never can. And I would say within a decade, social media will be restricted in the U.S. to 16. They've already done it in Australia. They've done it in a couple of European countries. I mean, the data is clear, the damage that it's causing, and some countries have started to move on that. So you're going to see it restricted. And just to kind of give you an idea, I mean, there's some dramatic differences that occur. So if you just look at alcohol use, for instance, if an individual becomes intoxicated before the age of 14 years old, they are 5 times more likely than a person who does not become intoxicated before 14 years old to be an adult alcohol addict. Okay, it's the same thing with social media. If you look at grades, if you look at emotional development, we could fill this room up with the data that exists. So it's not. I'm just not making this up. if you delay the exposure of children to smartphones, it's not just social media, it's smartphones in general, delay their exposure to that, they do better. And there's a couple of huge studies going on right now where they are actually paying families to take their child's smartphone away for 6 months. And the changes that they found in academic performance and mood are absolutely unbelievable. Unbelievable. Within the span of less than a month, academic improvements, mood improvements, by just not having access to it. So a lot of it has to just do with basically putting a bomb into an infant's lap and saying, here, play with this, even though you don't have the ability to deal with it. And as a society, we really have to step back and say, what are we doing? Because, I mean, we all know it's a problem, but yet we don't really do anything about it.
I just want to add to that real quick. So this week, Meta was found guilty in 2 court cases in 2 different states. One of being complicit in child exploitation, and the other in creating an addictive product that causes mental harm and anxiety in youth. We're seeing their internal documents that this was all on purpose. And so I do agree that we're going to see some changes going forward with our youth and giving them access. As far as resilience, it's not just the introduction of phones and social media. We as parents grew up in stranger danger, the white van. Like we can see those external forces. And then when the phones came out, it was like, well, my kid's safe. They're at home. Like nothing's going on. And it's hard for us to relate what's going on, and that's what's caused this problem. And so 2 things occurred because of that. We gave them the phones and the access to all the data and the information and things out there, and we protected them in the real world. We didn't want them to have broken bones. We didn't want them to talk to strangers. We didn't want them to get bullied or rejected. And so that resilience piece, those little moments of even feeling bored, they haven't had that, and they don't have the life experience to know that this too shall pass. I will get over that. So as parents, it is so hard. I have 2 teens myself, but allowing them to struggle is so key, especially when they're young and things are small, because as they develop that resilience, they know that they can handle more as they get older.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. If like somebody is, like if you see a post and somebody's posting things and it's just negative, you can unfollow them. You don't have to follow them. Just because you unfollow them, it doesn't mean you hate them. I've unfollowed girls that I love just because it's comparison and it's making me hate my life and it's making me hate myself. Followers and likes, it's just a number. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's not going to get you into heaven. It doesn't have any moral value. And unfortunately, people do make moral assumptions. I even had an instance where somebody said like very, very, very negative things about me and my character based on the number of followers I have. They were saying that I was not a good person because I had 2,000 followers. And my posts are pretty good posts. I post about Jesus and suicide awareness, all I post about. And I was like, I find it so interesting that people can come to that conclusion based on a number. So, you can unfollow people. You don't have to follow people. That's all I have to say.
Lovely, good. I got some questions from the audience now, so let's go through a couple of these or a few of these. And this is for everybody on the panel. What would you say to a youth leader who asks, how do I get a teen to stop talking about their suicide attempt? How do I get a teen to stop talking about their suicide attempt?
So this is a tricky one because you have different type of people who will make an outcry, and there are those who just want the sympathy and they love the pity, and they're going to tell everyone who will listen that they're suicidal and make a show about it. And then you have the ones who are wearing a mask that may just slide it in there every now and then just to see like how you'll react and then retreat. And then you have those who don't say anything and they start to say stuff over and over. It's like everything else in life. You have to use discernment. And even if they are that dramatic girl who just keeps on and on and on, take it seriously. Like, it does not matter what you think the reason they're doing it. That girl, I say girl because usually it's the dramatic ones or the girls. She's still talking about, she's still considering it. If you want someone to talk about less, listen to them. Acknowledge that you hear them, because they are going to keep talking about it until they get heard.
Amen to that. I mean, I think it's a cry for help, however it comes out, whether it's repetitive, talking about their attempts, whether it comes out in a text message or however it comes out, it's a cry for help. We can't dismiss it.
I was going to add that as the same thing. Being a youth leader, if they talk about the difference between talking about a suicide attempt and talking about doing a suicide attempt. And I would make sure, first of all, that their parents understand what's going on with that young person and make sure that they can communicate with them, and then don't just write them off. You need to sit down and have more conversations with them as well, I feel like. So, you have a question? Why don't you grab them? Hey, Guy, can you take that mic to that young lady right out there? There's a mic. Let's get you a mic first.
Referring to that question, I always like to think about, like, would you rather be temporarily annoyed or forever guilty? Like, yes, it might be annoying in the moment, but the guilt that you're going to feel for the rest of your life is indescribable. And so even if it's a few months or years and maybe they get help and they're still struggling, like, to just keep working with them, because if you love someone, like, you will never stop trying to help them. And I can tell you, like, the guilt is not worth it. And if someone is saying they need help, to follow up on it, because it definitely is stemming from somewhere, even if it's just trying to get attention.
And I also want to add that if they're talking about it so much, I can promise you that they're thinking about it in their head 10 times more. Like, just because they say it, all the time, in your head, everything is just a buildup. And when they go to sleep, they're thinking about it. Like, when they wake up, they think about it. So just be, what's the word I'm looking for? Like,
Receptive?
Yeah, just exactly, receptive, mindful, to that, and help them through it, help them guide through that, because their thoughts need to settle down and they're looking at you as an outlet for their own thoughts. Thanks.
I kind of wanted to add on to that. That was really good, Grace. Just because somebody is talking about it, it's not really our place to assume, if they're doing it for attention. It's just our place to listen. And if somebody is saying it a bunch, and like Grace said, if it's building up in their head, it's affecting them 100 times more. And there's a statistic, it takes people with depression on average 10 years to reach out for help. So if they're saying that, take it as a real claim and talk to them about what that really means, because it could be maybe they don't know the true severity of that, and maybe they do, but the truth is, it's just good to invest your time into that and talk about that and really dive deep into their life.
Another question from some of the audience members here says, what is the healthiest, most proactive response to a child describing being bullied at school? What's a good response for a child that's describing being bullied at school?
Listening.
I'm sorry?
Listening.
Listening. I like that.
That's it.
Just listen to it. 39 years ago when I started in youth ministry, we didn't have online bullying. We had just face-to-face bullying, and you could deal with that a lot easier, I think, sometimes than the online bullying. But I think you're right, just listening to them.
I think, too, thank you for telling me. Thank you for trusting me with this thing that I'm sure is very painful. And then don't try and solve the issue. I know I immediately go into, I want to stop the pain. Just listen, like you said, and be there for them, and let them talk about it with, and avoid that temptation of trying to offer the solution, because they have probably already run a lot of that through their head, and they're probably capable of coming up with something, and they just need a safe place.
That's good.
Grace, want to add something?
Grab a mic again. And turn around and face that way, because it's being filmed.
Is it on?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it's not. How do you turn this on?
No, he's cutting you.
Oh, it is? Oh. Okay. I just want to add, like, I'm someone who's been bullied, and you, as a parent, know your kid best, and so look at how they act with everything. I'm someone who's always had like a positive mindset, I like to think, and I'm always someone who treats others with kindness. So anytime that I get bullied, my mom always tells me to just kill them with my kindness, because that's what they want. The bullies, they want to see your weakness. They want to see you break. And so if you give them that, if you let them see your weakness, I know they said it in the video, but then they won. You let them win. And so my mom has always said, just don't let them win. And so I wake up every day, I show my weakness to my family, and my family allows me to do that. Like, so let your kid show their weakness to you, but don't let them show that to whoever at school or online or whatever is bullying. Okay.
Be the safe place.
Yes, exactly.
The second question on that same card, the best response to a child that says, I hate my life.
It's okay to be not okay.
It's okay.
Tell me more.
Tell me more. I like those.
And also remind them that a bad day doesn't mean you're having a bad life.
right.
You know, I mean, in our kids' heads, I mean, you know, everything is like, so it gets really blown up, and they can't see past that moment, and so they equate it to being a bad life.
That's right.
It could just be a bad day.
It could be just a bad day.
And this too will pass. And this is such a small blip in your life, you know? And I think that's another thing our teenagers forget. Like high school, this teenage year, this is such a short time in your whole scheme of life, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, like, help them maybe create a list, or like remind them like of upcoming fun events. Make plans with them, like whether that's also with friends and family. Just, although like it's gonna be hard because they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, everything's bad, but just try and remind them in like a nice way, like what they have to be grateful for. And I think like gratitude can be like really grounding.
And be careful not to minimize, because I know from my experience, this too shall pass didn't mean, you know, like, you know, it will get better or anything. It was, okay, shut up. I'm not going to listen to you anymore because you'll get over it tomorrow. You know, so it's good and bad depending on how you present it. So make sure if you say something like that, that you're not doing it to minimize, and just get the conversation over with.
Yeah. Since elementary school, kids, we build up this like pressure in our minds. We're like, we have to get into a good college, we have to do this, this, and this is the only way. And so we kind of put that pressure on ourselves. And so when we're saying like, I hate my life, it's hating what we're putting ourselves through to try to get to a goal that like we don't even know what that looks like. We're just hoping like that's going to be good enough. And so I think it's so important that we have an outlet. So that means like I take my Fridays and I go like volunteer at like the elementary schools, and like we literally met each other yesterday. And like that to me is so important because I want to go into pediatrics. So I see like what my future looks like. I can say like, oh, what I'm doing is like worth my time. And that gives me like a space to like let go of things. And I can say, I can change that narrative of, oh, I hate my life. And I can say, oh, I hate all the work that I'm trying to do right now, but I know that it'll be worth it. And I can change that attitude. I can be like, this work is worth it. I don't have to hate it. I can choose a different way to like look at it. And that is so, so important.
Yeah, that's really good. I would say just encouraging them, kind of pushing them a little bit to like look at it with a different mindset. Kind of like she said, like gratitude changes the attitude. And it's not a bad day. Like life is full of ups and downs, and that's just the way it is. Like sometimes I'll wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, my life sucks. And then some days I'm like, oh, I get Starbucks today. This is so great. And this is such a stupid example, but there's this trend on TikTok and it's like, F my Chungus life. But one time my friend said that and I was like, no, bless this Chungus life. Every day you wake up is a blessing and it's a new opportunity. Just because yesterday sucked or last week sucked or last month sucked, that doesn't mean anything. Like, it's just your mindset that's holding you back. And like, it's so much easier to focus on the bad because it's just more comfortable. But like, if you focus on the good and you see like everything, like I'm breathing right now, like God gave me life and I'm alive, like that changes so much for you.
We need to
I'm
put that on
gonna-
a shirt.
Okay.
Bless this Chungus life.
Bless this Chungus life.
I'm going to be a downer right now because there are moments in my life, someone would be like, oh, be thankful you woke up. And I would be like, no, I didn't want to wake up. So don't underestimate trauma and what it can do to people because I have a very negative or dark is a better word, outlook on what I worked out of prison, a women's prison. I worked on Fort Hood as a counselor, and now I deal with special needs, which is a high abuse population. A child who is being abused and wants to commit suicide because they don't want to deal with the trauma, it's saying, some people, discernment, some people you can, everyone's different. You can say, hey, look, this is a blessed life. But someone who's living a life that they don't want to live, someone who's living a life of every day they don't want to exist, every day is a new day that they have to suffer. Every day is a new day to receive a new trauma. It's not a happy thing to wake up that day. So when you're dealing with someone like that, you need to give them a reason to be happy. Give them a smile, give them a hug. It doesn't take much. Say, I'm here for you. I'll listen to you. Just acknowledging trauma, like, I acknowledge that what you're going through is hard. And that's another reason the sayings, again, it can be good, but sayings like, this too shall pass, or tomorrow's a better day, I call them bumper sticker slogans. And I refer this more to trauma victims. They've heard it all. Oh, it will only get better from here. Well, if you're getting abused every day, it's not going to get better. It may get better 10 years from now, but you still have to live that life until you're 18 and you can get away. And even then, you can't always get away. So you have to be careful with your words. I think actions speak louder than words. Like, you can talk all day long, but it means nothing if there's no action behind it. You can just sit with someone and not say a single word, and that can be so powerful. So it's not about your words. Your words can be inspirational, but it's also about your actions. I know from personal experiences, that's all I needed, was someone just to sit next to me and say nothing. Just, I needed to know someone was willing to be with me. So you have to analyze the situation, and if it's your friend, you're going to know more about your friend than a stranger. But if someone randomly comes up to you and starts talking to you, you have to listen, and it's active listening. It's complicated, but it's not once you know what to look for. Once you know how to do it, once it can be so easy.
I want to be very conscious of your time. It's almost noon, and I know we started a little bit late, so I've got just two more questions that I'm going to ask from the cards. And this one is really particularly important to me because I'm a dad of 2 young ladies at one time, and they're all grown up and married now and have children of their own. But here's the question. Is there any particular role that a dad plays with daughters with their mental health? What role can a dad play with a daughter with mental health?
I think maybe I'm uniquely qualified to answer that. And I'm going to be conscious of time as well. I grew up, my dad was old school, right? That's the generation I came from. And I completely, like it was yesterday, remember playing football and getting hurt, and my dad coming on the field and saying, "Get up, that didn't hurt." And I remember thinking at that time, laying on the field, thinking, yeah, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, but I think this might be the definition of hurt. So I think that validation, right? I think as being a dad, I think you role model. I'm certainly not going to role model what it's like to be a woman, but I'm not supposed to. And I think that a lot of times that's your superpower as a dad, is you let them see your weaknesses, you let them see your strengths, and you're there all the time. There's a saying when I used to work with kids that it takes 1,000 attaboys to overcome one you're dumb or you're stupid. So to put that in perspective, I turn that around because I'm pretty simple like that. I could tell one of my kids 1,000 times, "I'm so proud of you, you're amazing." And I can undo all of that with one, "What's the matter with you?" So I think a big part of it as a dad is you create the space and you create the environment and you create the atmosphere that your kids live in, especially daughters. You let them be who they are, you let them feel what they feel. You don't try to fix everything, but you're always there to listen and you're always there to support. But most importantly is you're creating an environment that is promoting, empowering, and is safe for them, because that's the environment that they need to live in.
I think that, the most obvious, in my opinion, would be that, as the father, you're the model to your daughter of the opposite sex relationship. First off, how the father treats the mother in front of that female daughter, and then how you treat that daughter. I mean, that's the first opposite sex kind of intimate relationship that they're going to have. And I think a lot of times, especially in the society that we live in, the culture we live in now, the thought is that the caregiving falls to the mother and all the emotional things fall to the mother, and the father goes out and makes the money and he's distant. And I think that that's a tremendous problem in our society, because that's what the daughter is looking to the father for, is that kind of relationship. And then, I don't think it can really be sold short how important it is how the father treats the mother in front of that daughter, because modeling is everything for children. And you're teaching. I mean, just in my own life as a mental health care provider, I've just seen, self-fulfilling prophecies of, an abusive father, and a daughter that watched that, and then she goes out and finds the same abuser to have a relationship with, and you're like, you want to just say, what are you doing? You watch this, but it's so ingrained in that is what a relationship looks like. And so no, I think those just, I don't want to be too Freudian on this, but, I think that it's just pretty obvious that you're modeling for them what their romantic relationship should be like, and you should have a high expectation for that so that they have a high expectation for that.
I just wanted to talk about my dad because something I really respect him for is that he is actually able to show his emotions. He has a very, very stressful job, and I feel like I've seen him through his highs and lows, but he's always able to be honest and be like, I am struggling right now. Work is very stressful, and I just feel like that's made me feel more comfortable with my own mental health. And I've seen him one of his great coping mechanisms for his mental health is exercise. And so I feel like, I've been able to see him create a routine and follow that. And so then that's inspired me to do the same thing to help with my own mental health.
Kim, you started it.
Oh, yeah. Just real quick, I grew up with two sisters, so my dad didn't have any sons. So, but it always was, I think, we just automatically assume that the mother and daughter are going to be closer and the father and son are going to have a closer relationship, and sometimes that is the way it works. But I think it's important for the father to carve out special time for his daughter, because, maybe he is the one who's working all the time and the breadwinner of the family. But when you just carve out just some, and it didn't have to be anything huge, but just some special one-on-one time with the daughter, that's very meaningful, and it really goes a long way, and it shows that it doesn't always have to be about sports. It doesn't always have to be about this, just, I love you, daddy-daughter dances, daddy-daughter dates, take your daughter to dinner, things like that. Just having that one-on-one time with your dad, because I was closer to my dad than my mom growing up, and actually I still am, because I think it's because he carved out that special time for us.
That's awesome. Well, before I get to this very last question, is there any questions from anybody in the audience? We got a mic up here. That anything that we didn't answer, or they didn't answer, or go ahead and grab a mic and ask your question.
So, what do you do in the instance where the dad is like completely out of the picture and, golly gee, you're trying so hard. You're trying so hard to make it a safe place for your kids. And how important it is for the dads to be there, but they're just not. How do you help? How do you fill that void? Sorry.
Anybody want to tackle? It's a tough question. I know and understand.
I don't think that you're ever, realistically, I don't think that you're ever going to completely fill that void. But I think that I don't want to call them options, but I think that there are options out there. I think that's where your church comes in. I think that's where your fellowship comes in. I think that there are good male role models out there that don't necessarily have to be biological dad. I've some of the biggest mentors that I have had weren't my dad. Some of the biggest lessons that I've had in life weren't my dad. Some of the biggest lessons that my dad taught me was that wasn't supposed to hurt, and it did, right? Some of the biggest male mentors that I had were through youth groups, and were, if alternative is the right term, there are options out there. You just need to know where to find them, right? If you want good, healthy relationships, you need to surround yourself with good, healthy people. And you know where to find those. You know where those are at. I think there's always options. It doesn't have to be the traditional biological father. There's options out there.
And I would add to that having a healthy male relationship that's not the biological father is so much better than having a relationship with a dysfunctional, traumatizing biological father. So there's no, it's not some secondary, second-class citizen. It's the better option. And so you just have to look around and find who those people are. They're in your life. They're there. It's a grandfather, it's a youth minister, it's a pastor, it's a neighbor. It's, they're there. And they're probably willing to step up, but they're just nervous to want to know that they have that right to do that. So, that's why things like, Boys and Girls Clubs exist, where you have a mentor that's assigned. That's because we know that this is, having the strong female role model or a strong male role model that isn't already there. So, there are things like that exist, but there's also probably individuals in your life that would be more than happy to step in and be that role model. And do keep reminding yourself that an unhealthy relationship is always worse than a healthy relationship. And so, I think that's the thing that's very important.
First, thank you very much for being brave. It's not easy asking that question, so thank you. But from someone who grew up with that dysfunctional parent, my dad was physically present. My parents were married, but they shouldn't have been. And my dad, we never saw him. He locked himself in the room doing inappropriate things. So my friends didn't even know I had a dad. That's how often, and they came over like every weekend. That's how often he wasn't there. And so I didn't turn to him, even though he was there. I had mentors, like they were saying. I did theater. There were mentors in theater, teachers, coaches, and even neighbors. I had a neighbor across the street, a nice couple, that older couple I would go to and listen to their stories. And so it's everyone. It takes a community to help kids, and church is very important.
I think one final question from the...
I have a specific question for you guys. So I know you were talking about how like we need to like start the conversations with people that are struggling, but I have seen like in my own family and myself, like when I get in those depressive episodes, I lock myself in my room, and when someone like tries to come to talk to me, I get like defensive. I'm like, I'm fine. So what is kind of a way to begin to open up those conversations, not saying that we see something wrong with you, but in a way that, you know, I want to build our relationship, and I want to see you in a place where like you're not in your room all the time, and like you're able to like come eat dinner with our family. Because I'm talking about my sister, because she's definitely like going through some stuff right now, and she just says like, oh well, I just don't want to eat dinner with you guys because it always ends up like in a fight or something. But when it's us three, like my mom and my dad and me, like we're fine. But I just feel like she doesn't even try, and we try to get her to come, and she just like makes up excuses, and it's kind of just feels like impossible to reach her.
I'm gonna go first.
Are you talking that it's hard to reach her when she's having a bad episode, or just all the time?
All the time.
All the time. How old is she?
She's 19.
Okay. Does she have some trauma related to your family?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, you know, I think that, I mean, first off, I would say this, and that is, you know, we oftentimes talk about these things that, you know, what do we do in the bad time? You got to do all the work in the good time to make it easier during the bad time. So I think what I would recommend is that you start to look for opportunities where she is more receptive. Maybe if dinner is an issue, then that's not the thing to work on. You work the relationship on things that aren't the issues so that you can build the relationship stronger. And then that gives you the opportunity to have the conversation, not at dinner, in another setting about dinner or about what those issues are. What we have a tendency to do, and we're kind of trained in a bad way, is that we just kind of keep throwing things back in people's faces right in the moment. Where like, why don't you eat dinner with us? Look, it's dinner time. Come see dinner. And it's like the worst time to have that conversation. The best time to have that is when you're at the rodeo and you're having a great time, and you're just talking about different stuff, and you're like, I wish that we could all as a family have this much fun when we're at dinner. Things like that. So it's a positive experience, and you can actually have a person open up. I would say that, you also have to understand that, there's something behind the reason that she doesn't want to have dinner with you. And that's really what's important. It's not the fact of forcing her to come sit down and have dinner with you. It's about figuring out what it is. And until you figure out what that is and have a conversation with her about that, and she feels more comfortable and open and can start to work through that, having dinner with you is just a symptom of the problem. It's not the real problem. So I think that, you certainly probably have positive experiences with your sister, and so does your father, and I think those are the times to have these conversations and to ask questions about why she doesn't want to do that. I think trying to force the issue a lot of times just makes it worse. And whenever anyone's and you hit it right on the head at the beginning, whenever you're having a difficult time, isolation is what we all try to cope by isolating, but that's a negative coping strategy. It just makes things worse. So, I think it's just, what I tell people is when you're struggling with these problems like this, you can't think, hours to days kind of thing. You got to think weeks to months to years to work these things through. So just give yourself time and think about it as a process. It's just about building better communication, having more happy times, so that you can have those conversations to deal with the problems.
Can't say anything any better. I think he was absolutely right. I think that you don't start working on communication when you need to communicate, right? You need to start working on communication, as he said, when it's the little stuff. That's what I talked about an hour and a half ago when I said nothing is trivial. You create the environment. Somebody is not going to open up and talk about a big deal when it's the big deal. That groundwork has to be laid. That footwork has to be established already. So, sometimes that isn't. Sometimes you go into the situation knowing that that's not exactly why you're talking, but you're not going to talk about what you need to be talking about today. Right. And you start the conversations with commonalities. You start the conversations with a walk. You start the conversations with going to the park. And it may not be what you're trying to talk about, it may not be what you're trying to get at, but you are laying the groundwork and you are establishing that comfort level so that it's there. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That helps a lot. Thank you very much.
For the last question, I'm going to address this to Kim exactly because it's this. How do you find or start an organization like Hope Squad or Cassidy Join for Hope on your campus? How do you start?
You start with me. Yeah. You need to have a teacher sponsor and some students that have a passion for it. Both the teacher and the students have to have a passion for it to make it successful and to make it work and to make it sustainable. We provide the curriculum. We can provide, map out your yearly activities. We financially support these clubs. We bring in the training for it. I visit every club at some meeting at some point throughout the year, and we have another teacher that's on our board that goes and does some training as well. We help bring in guest speakers to the clubs to talk. Usually they're local mental health professionals that want to donate just an hour of their time throughout the year to go visit some of these different clubs to talk about different mental health topics that the kids want to hear about. We listen to what they want their club to look like. Every club is run a little differently, but you can start with us. You can email us at cassidyjoinforhope.com. We have a resource table out here with a lot more information. But I think how do y'all feel like the clubs have been going in y'all's schools? Pretty good, yeah. So, and they do a lot more than just activities in their after-school hour. They spread the message throughout the entire school, through all year long. Especially in the month of September, which is National Suicide Prevention Month, we have things planned throughout the entire month of September, including like Purple Out football games, like they have Pink Out games in October for breast cancer awareness. We get the whole community's involvement in the message, and it's just simple terms of breaking the silence. Remove the stigma. Let's just talk about it. And then just a shameless plug. In September, we're going to do something, our second Break in the Silence event, hopefully at Woodlands Church again, where we bring in a guest speaker, and we'll do something similar to this again, where we have students panel Q&A at the end, and we have our keynote speaker go out into the schools while they are in town and go visit and present at different schools in our area. So last year, our presenter spoke at 7 different schools and just reached that many more kids out in the community. So anyway, we'd be happy to have additional Join for Hope clubs. So yeah. Okay.
And you can see 5 of these amazing young ladies from Cassidy Join for Hope, and just outstanding. So that's the benefit of the club as well. So listen, I want to just thank everybody for coming and showing up today, and I wish there was hundreds in here because this topic is so important. We do have some tables out there, some fantastic organizations that took some time away to come and be here. We have Yes to Youth, Interfaith of the Woodlands. We have Mosaics for Mercy, certainly Hope and Healing Center and Institute, as well as Thrive Offline and Cassidy Join for Hope. And did I miss anybody? If I did, I'm sorry. I'm trying to go by memory. But please take advantage of the time with the tables and get some more information. And I really appreciate y'all coming. This is good. We're going to have a recording that'll be available on our website of the panel discussion. That'll be available on our church's website later on. And I want to thank the panelists for being here and taking time out of your busy day. And you are all just great. So thank you. God bless you.